A federal judge has blocked Donald Trump from deploying any National Guard into Oregon, saying an effort to circumvent the block on federalizing Oregon National Guard must itself be blocked. Now, this story is a bit convoluted, but the back and forth suggests, ladies and gentlemen, well, let me put it this way. I've never heard the phrase Civil War more in my life, and I'm the Civil War guy, right? It's pretty scary now how many people I've talked to in the past week or so who are giving me this fearful look like, Tim, I think you were right. So let me start from the beginning. Now, first of all, there's a lot of news that broke over this weekend, including 2 terror attacks on ICE once again, which resulted in a shootout. And I didn't even know there was 2. There's a viral video going around of a car ramming an ICE vehicle, and we thought that was the only incident. Turns out it was the second. Not to mention the attacks on ICE facilities in the past several months. So, following this wake of protests at the ICE facility in Oregon, which things are out of control and escalating, Portland police are protecting Antifa and arresting people like Nick Sorter. Donald Trump said to Pete Hegseth, do what you got to do, send in the troops, full force. Now, here's where it gets really weird. A federal judge said that Trump's orders don't reflect the reality on the ground, which is immaterial to whether or not Donald Trump has the authority to station National Guard. Depending on what those troops are ordered to do, could be at question. Well, in order to federalize the Oregon National Guard, or I should say, Trump tries to federalize the Oregon National Guard for this purpose, and this judge said, nah, you can't do it. So Trump says, okay, we're going to call up California National Guard. Now this judge has said once again, no, you cannot do it. Greg Abbott has volunteered troops, National Guard from Texas, to be deployed. Trump has authorized the deployment of 300 National Guard troops to Chicago in the wake of these 2 targeted leftist terror attacks. Oh boy. It is so insane right now. I wake up this Monday morning thinking, I think I'm going to get work done early because there's so much news. But the escalation that we're seeing, it's actually rather terrifying. Following the attacks in Chicago, Trump's deployment of the National Guard blocked by judges, Trump asserting once again, Newsom suing, Oregon suing. We got another story. A judge who ruled against Donald Trump, who had been criticized by Harmeet Dillon. Her vacation home exploded, burst into flames while she was walking on the beach. Her husband and several family members were in the building. They had to jump from the second floor from a balcony, and I believe they all were seriously injured. Now, this may or may not be related at all to any kind of political violence. We don't know yet. Some have suggested, based on this preliminary video, that it was a propane leak built up over time. It's a vacation house. And then when they arrived, a fire starts. The fuel accelerates it. That's why they had to jump off the balcony, perhaps. Now, I'm going to get into this on a different segment where I can go in detail. But as it pertains to the question of civil war, Time magazine has reported definitively their house was set on fire. Well, we don't know that. And therein lies the big challenge we face with how the corporate press operates. The writer got this through their editors and published saying this judge's home was set on fire. The response? Liberals across social media saying, oh my God, after this judge ruled against Trump, her home is set on fire. You tell me what time you think it is, my friends. You tell me. From the BBC, Trump authorizes deployment of 300 National Guard troops to Chicago. U.S. President Donald Trump has authorized the deployment of 300 National Guard troops to Chicago to address what he says is out-of-control crime. The move came hours after immigration authorities said they confronted protesters in the Democrat-run city. Officials said an armed woman was shot after she and others allegedly rammed their cars into law enforcement vehicles. You know what I love about the way the corporate press operates? Now, this is Britain, mind you, the BBC. I'm actually going to, I'm going to pull it up for you. I'm going to show you the video of one of the attacks. And this is how absolutely insane things are getting. I just got to scroll down and find that there video. Now, initially, when I shared this video, we'll pull up this post from Tricia McLaughlin. Here's the important context. Now, again, I stress this. They said, how did the BBC write it? After immigration authorities said they confronted protesters. I don't care to convince anybody. I don't care to convince these liberals or these leftists They're lying. I seek to convince you, not of anything in particular, not of any ideology. I seek to convince you of what is true and what is not. Watch the video. I don't know if we have sound on this. Oh, we do. What you are watching, for those that are just listening, is a black SUV ramming a white ICE truck. Law enforcement vehicles then charge in after it. They run the truck off the road. This is not confronting or whatever they want to describe it, confronting protesters. This was a targeted attack on ICE, and that was the second one. We had heard the story from Tricia McLaughlin. Here's what she said. This footage is not from the attack in Chicago involving the 10-car caravan blockading our law enforcement, not involving LaMaggie. This is from another vehicular assault later that day in Chicago. In one day, far-left terrorists attacked ICE twice. For those of you that are convinced and understand what time it is, thank you and have a nice day. For those that refuse to believe it, even to this point, wake up. Donald Trump is deploying National Guard because terrorists have attacked federal law enforcement on numerous occasions in the past several months, twice in one day in Chicago. They're going to say state and local leaders have for weeks criticized Trump's deployment plans, calling it an abuse of power. The announcement came as a federal judge in Portland temporarily blocked the Trump administration from deploying 200 troops there. Well, Pritzker has responded to this, and I forgive me, I normally pull these things up well in advance, but I do have Pritzker's tweet right here. This evening, President Trump is ordering 400 members of the Texas National Guard for deployments in Illinois, Oregon, and other locations within the U.S. No officials from the federal government called me directly to discuss or coordinate. We must now start calling this what it is, Trump's invasion. It started with federal agents. It will soon include deploying federalized members of the Illinois National Guard against our wishes. And it will now involve sending in another state's military troops. After the attack on ICE officers, Chicago police were reportedly ordered to stand down and leave the area as far-left extremists began to crowd around ICE, leaving them vulnerable. This got a lot of people spooked. This is where we currently are. In Portland, Oregon, Nick Sorter was physically attacked. Portland police arrested him. Katie Davis Court, a reporter, was smacked and out of the pole. Police refused to arrest the assailant despite seeing who did it. Police then issued a statement saying Katie Davis Court was a counter-protester antagonizing. I don't know why so many people don't understand what's going on. And so I'm going to say this, and I hope you listen, those that don't believe me. I want you to imagine what it would be like to witness a man dressed like Hitler taking a child and about to abuse that child in public in full view, right? How would you feel if you saw something like that about to happen? You'd probably be filled with rage. You'd probably intervene and take action. That feeling you get witnessing an atrocity, that feeling is how the left feels about you all the time. Now, you may be saying, yeah, but why aren't they acting on it? Well, I would argue they are, but there's an addition to this. Imagine that unrepentant evil that you are looking at, about to engage in unrepentant evil in front of your eyes. However, there is an army of evil police protecting him. And if you intervene, they'll stop you. This is how the left feels. And there are too many conservatives that are like, if only we have a conversation, they might understand. Do you think when you meet these trans furry child abusers, they're going to listen to you? Or do you think they are compelled, degenerate, and deranged? Now, by all means, the average moderate liberal who doesn't know what's going on could probably be convinced in some capacity. The only problem is the media's lying to them every day. So why would they believe you? And this is where we get our escalation. with Governor Pritzker saying, I call on Governor Abbott to immediately withdraw any support for this decision and refuse to coordinate. There is no reason a president should send military troops into a sovereign state without their knowledge, consent, or cooperation. There is. It's called insurrection. Now, here's the reality. Trump is playing it light. These troop deployments are simple stationing, and therein lies the interesting challenge. California and Oregon to fight Trump as both sue over deployed National Guard. What Donald Trump is doing is not ordering the troops to go and attack people or enforce local laws. He's stationing them at these federal buildings where he has the authority to do so, because if the National Guard is at risk, they're allowed to legally respond, protecting the federal property. They're suing Trump as if he is deploying the troops for law enforcement purposes, which is not the case. Stephen Miller responds to the judge. An Oregon judge ruled that the commander-in-chief cannot station federal troops in her state to defend the lives of federal officers. Indeed, Judge Immergut has issued her written temporary restraining order prohibiting the Trump administration from relocating or deploying federalized National Guard troops to Oregon. Now, this is really interesting. The reasoning? She read the news and disagreed with Trump. I'm not kidding. She read the news and disagreed with Trump. That's not her authority. She can cite law. That would be fine. And some on the right, even some lawyers, have said this is a fine TRO. Trump may win in the end, but she's citing real precedent and law here. But if her statement is, after reviewing the news footage, Trump's wrong, that's not your call to make. Here's the letter. Based on this court's prior opinion and order granting plaintiff's first motion for temporary restraining order, ECF 56, the hearing on plaintiff's second motion for temporary restraining order, and the newly submitted declarations, plaintiff's second motion is as follows. Defendants are temporarily enjoined from deploying federalized members of the National Guard in Oregon. The second temporary restraining order expires by its own terms in 14 days. Plaintiffs are ordered to post a nominal bond of $100 within 48 hours. The bond shall be filed in the clerk's office and be deposited into the registry of the court. Defendants' request to stay or administratively stay the second temporary restraining order, which is raised in the hearing on plaintiff's second motion for temporary restraining order, is denied. The court clerk will contact the parties as to schedule a telephone hearing on October 17th to address whether the second TRO should be extended another 14 days. Any motion for a preliminary injunction shall be filed no later than blah, blah, blah. A combined hearing, blah, blah, blah. It is so ordered. Karen J. Immergut. Here you go, ladies and gentlemen. From the New York Post, Trump defies federal court, sends 300 California National Guard troops to Portland, Oregon, on their way now. This is from yesterday, and it was before. So here's what happens. The judge says, Trump, you can't deploy troops. Trump says, then I'll deploy troops from California. The judge then says, you can't send troops from anywhere. Check this out. The New York Post says President Trump on Sunday deployed 300 National Guard troops to Portland, Oregon, defying a federal order blocking the move. Hold on there a minute. The move said Trump couldn't federalize Oregon National Guard. So Trump said, I'll bring in California National Guard. The new TRO, the one I just read previously, says you can't send any federalized troops, which is now interesting considering Texas is offering up 400 of theirs. After a federal court blocked its attempt to federalize the Oregon National Guard, Trump is deploying 300 California National Guard personnel to Oregon. They are on their way now. We are taking this fight back to court. The public cannot stay silent in the face of such reckless and authoritarian conduct by the President of the United States. Newsom's fiery threat came hours after a federal judge temporarily halted Trump. Last week, the commander-in-chief ordered Secretary of War Pete Hegseth to unleash all necessary troops to Portland use full force. U.S. District Judge Karen Immergut, a Trump appointee, ruled Saturday that deploying active duty troops in Portland would not only violate the Constitution, but also defy federal law barring military involvement in domestic law enforcement. She added that Trump's order did not reflect the reality of protests taking place at the immigration processing facility in South Portland. Overall, the protests were small and uneventful, she wrote. The president's determination was simply untethered to the facts. That is not a question for her. That is a question for the president to decide. The question before her is, does the president have the authority to relocate National Guard? End of story. Now, she's ruled Trump can't federalize the National Guard. There is something called the protective principle, which has been cited for decades, that allows the National Guard or the Marines, the military, to protect federal buildings. I do believe it is fair to say Trump would need to invoke the Insurrection Act at this point. I think Trump can station National Guard where he wants. It's crazy that they'd argue he can't because it's been done by other presidents in the past. This is the game being played. Immergut later expressed frustration the Trump administration had defied the court order. He didn't. And that Hegseth had authorized the Texas National Guard to enter the state. During a late-night Sunday hearing, she blocked the admin from deploying National Guard members from any state, which is what I read for you just a moment ago. Judge Immergut has written her temporary restraining order. She said, "What I'll do is not modify my original TRO, but issue a new temporary restraining order that prohibits the relocation or deployment of any federalized National Guard to the state of Oregon." I asked this question on X. What do you call it when you've got sustained protests and violence against federal authorities that are legally doing their job? The state is aiding and abetting the far left. They're actually trying to build prosecutorial criminal cases against federal law enforcement. The states are blocking are defying his authority and blocking his effort to deploy National Guard. What do you call what we're in right now with the terror attacks, etc.? I get this response where they're like, "I'd call it states' rights." And then everyone, look, this is where we are. I've never been this dominant, absolutist states' rights guy. So when the federal government seeks to intervene, I'm like, yeah, okay, fairly liberal guy for a while, right? I'm now being told that I must be a states' rights guy. They say, "You guys," because they're a cult and they are insane. And that's reality. It's like that analogy I just gave a moment ago. Imagine what it would be like to witness a Nazi, a literal Nazi, like an actual white supremacist neo-Nazi guy who was about to abuse a child right before your eyes. You would do anything to stop that person. That's what the left thinks about you, you white supremacist colonizer. You are pure evil. And so they want to do away with your system of governance and take over. I think this goes in one direction. I think all of the stories we've seen so far and the conflict that we are seeing, for a judge to tell Trump that it doesn't reflect the protests. So what? She read CNN? It doesn't matter what her opinion is on the protests. It matters that there are people who are staging outside of an ICE facility in the wake of several terror attacks against ICE facilities. That being the case, I don't think the issue is so singular as to Portland. The issue is the greater context we have seen over the past several years, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the expansion of political violence, and the terror attacks on ICE facilities, in which case Trump needs to be deploying protection to these facilities. I don't know if Trump will just simply do it, but we are facing a constitutional crisis, and there's no way out. There is no way out. The Trump administration will assert they have the authority under the protective principle to send National Guard to protect federal buildings, especially in the wake of terror attacks. The Supreme Court has been siding with Donald Trump. The states will continue to defy him. The question I asked last year, the question I ask you now, will they just let him do it? The answer is almost always going to be no. In California, Newsom signed a law. Federal law enforcement can't wear masks anymore. They can't wear masks. So I asked, do you think he will use the power of government to enforce that against these federal law enforcement guys who do live in California? And everyone told me no. I'm just so sick of it. He won't do it. He won't do it. He won't do it. They said the same thing about arresting Donald Trump, and they did that multiple times, or raiding his home, or arresting his lawyers. And they said he won't do it, he won't do it. And now in Oregon, the Portland police have been ordered to start collecting evidence for criminal charges against ICE officers. They're taking statements from Antifa. So you keep believing it will not escalate. Fine. I'm not saying this to those who think it will. I could be wrong, and I say it every time I talk about this. For all I know, the governors all stop and say, you know what, we can't do this anymore. Trump, we're so sorry. Trump meets with Pritzker, they hug. Maybe. What do I know? It's like the story of the ant and the grasshopper. The ants, they were stocking away food, worried about winter. And the grasshopper was like, y'all crazy. And they warned the grasshopper, and the grasshopper just said, I'll be fine. Winter came, and the grasshopper was starving to death. There was no food. And he went to the ants, and he begged, please, I'm dying. And they said, I'm sorry. You should have taken the threat more seriously. There's nothing we can do for you. We have but enough for ourselves. And they slammed the door in his face, and the grasshopper dies. The funny thing is, in the modern version of this they make for kids, the ants say, we'll share with you, as if that would actually happen. What's the worst case scenario for the ants in that story? They got extra food. They worked twice as hard, and winter was mild, and there was food aplenty, and they said, well, we'll always have full bellies. Our work was worth it. Or better yet, they trade that food later for luxury. Hard work pays off. That's what I see right here with all of these stories. The escalation seems endless. So what are you doing? Honest question. Because for me, we moved out to a rural area, bought a bunch of guns, got a bunch of extra food, and my worst case scenario, the guns don't lose value. The food's good for 30 years. So my worst case scenario is, well, actually, I said the worst case scenario is war actually breaks out. But in the event I'm wrong, the worst thing that could possibly happen if I'm wrong is I got guns I could always sell. I won't. I'll keep them. And I got food in buckets I can crack open and eat. That's simple. I don't know what's going to happen, guys. I have general ideas, and I've been eerily correct about many of it, so I hope I'm wrong. Smash the like button. Share the show with everyone you know. Stay tuned. We got more segments coming up for you throughout the day. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all in the next segment.